And Happy New Year. Welcome to the Always On Point podcast with Kristen Ambos. And today, to start off the new year, just like we started the podcast, we have Mrs. Megan Jacquet from Coldwell Banker Real Estate Group coming on board with us because we needed a part two. Had a lot of good stuff to talk about, and we wanted to continue that because it's still pertinent. Even, 6-7 episodes later.
Absolutely.
What's going on in the real estate market?
Yes, I think that we both came into that first episode with so much to say.
Yes.
Neither of us are short on the gift of gab.
Nope.
So thank you for having me back.
Yeah.
By the way, super happy to be able to kick off the first episode of 2025 to talk more about real estate and all things happening. It is 2025 is going to be a phenomenal year. I feel really good going into it.
I do too. Really and truly, like in the depths of my soul, feel like this is going to be an amazing year.
Yeah, same.
Good.
Same.
Good.
I think what we wanted to talk about in the last episode and that we felt was so important to bring in another episode about this to really dedicate time to it is how buyers and sellers are feeling in the current market.
Completely agree.
We talk a lot about the pain points that buyers have, but truly to understand it, I think our real estate agents need to know what the pain points are if they don't already. And the consumers trying to figure out to quantify and qualify the words that they have that say, like, why didn't I go and buy a house yet? Or what am I waiting for? So I think that's really what I want to dive into today with you too.
Yeah. And I love that because we talk about the pain points, but there's rarely anyone that's talking about how to get over the pain points, what the solutions are.
Right.
Instead of just saying, well, now's the time to buy.
Right.
Because if you look at a lot of people and their advertising and marketing right now, it's like, there's never been a better time to buy. We've heard that for the last 6 quarters and we're still sitting in the same area.
Right.
So let's bring some honesty to that.
Absolutely.
And what we're doing. So please, by all means.
I think one of the big ones is we have buyers who are waiting, and we referenced this in our very first episode too, but they're waiting for interest rates to drop.
Correct.
And you and I had a conversation about this previously where you had a buyer waiting to lock in their rate because like, there's a better rate coming. We know there's a better rate coming. Mm-hmm. And they waited to the point of the interest rates actually going up.
Yes.
Up instead of down. And that changes a lot of things. And I don't know if you want to go into like when we see that fluctuation, how that changes our monthly payments too.
Absolutely. And I think it's huge because it definitely does that. When the rates go up, it changes your overall payment, then changes what your price point could be. Because now maybe you're looking at a price point that's $10, $15, $20, $30, $50,000 lower.
Right.
And those are the types of things that people really need to understand when they're getting into this is locking the rate. So what we learned from the last quarter is even though the Federal Reserve is going to reduce their Fed funds rate, mortgages are not always directly correlated.
Right.
So the Fed funds rate dropped by now 0.5%, but rates slided up.
Very big misnomer. The two don't always go hand in hand.
No.
And, unfortunately it's become like the Fed Reserve has become this kind of a strange buzzword that gives people false confidence.
100% agree.
So I think that having people like you, leaders in the mortgage industry, to educate the consumers, saying don't always assume that when the Fed say, if rates are going up or rates are going down, that also goes hand in hand with mortgage rates. You talk about this baked in quite a bit, right?
Yep, it's always baked.
Do you want to touch on that really quickly so that when we talk about this, that the rest of the real estate agents who are listening to this or the consumers listening to this understand what you mean when you reference that?
Yeah, and I appreciate you bringing that up because it's a really hot topic. Baked in is kind of the other buzzword that comes up because when the Federal Reserve, let's go back to the beginning of the fourth quarter of 2024. And the Federal Reserve was like, we're dropping rates 0.5%. And everyone, no kidding, anyone that I was working with that had an accepted offer was, hold off, don't lock my interest rate in.
Right.
And I'm saying to them, listen, We've known that they're going to do a 0.5% interest rate for the last month. The investors are already excited about it. So they've already baked that into their pricing, meaning that they're already investing in interest rates that are lower on the anticipation of the Federal Reserve dropping.
Right.
So that's those rates. They didn't change overnight because the Federal Reserve dropped them. So that's the misnomer that you're talking about is don't wait for that day to come because the chances are that it's already within the rate and or the Federal Reserve says, you know what? I said we were going to do a 0.5%. Now we're only going to do 1/4. The investors who bought into the 0.5% are now going to raise rates because they were investing in a lower rate.
Right.
So the Fed funds rate is what we borrow rate at, but it's not what we, the consumer, borrows the interest rate at. It's what the banks borrow at. And then the banks get theirs by increasing your rates. It's this big game. So yes, the Fed's fund and what they're going to do with interest rates can help drive what's happening in the market, but it's not a direct correlation.
Right. At the end of the day, the consumer really is the third recipient.
Yes.
And we may not see as a consumer really end result when we any kind of end result different than what we already knew when we talk about the reserve going up,
Right.
the reserve going down.
And for those of you that know and understand, but for those of you that don't, Fannie Mae, Freddie Mac, the MBA, the Mortgage Bankers Association, things like that, just adjusted their rates for the upcoming 2025 year, where they were kind of hoping that they were going to be in the upper fives, but just adjusted them between 6.25% and 6.5%.
Yes.
Is what they're saying. That tells me that when we were here last time, we're holding steady in our markets between like 5 and 7% appreciation on homes year over year, which is great and steady. With our rates staying in the steady low to mid sixes, that's also going to be a really good, confident, stable market to buy in.
Absolutely. And from a couple different vantage points, buyers can prepare a little better.
Yes.
Because I think one of the pain points that we should touch on is down payments
Yeah.
and where that down payment comes from.
Absolutely.
It's a big stressor for buyers. Again, another misnomer. But also it helps stabilize housing prices straight across the board. Buyers can say, we know that there's going to maybe be a little bit steadier inventory that may not move as quickly. Now, that's not to say that every price point is not going to go quickly, but there might be some that are going to hold a little bit longer.
Correct.
They might have more options.
Yeah.
They might have the ability to understand and the time to save what that down payment looks like.
Yeah.
So holding a steady market, and really when we look at the entire state, we're up about 9% in appreciation. And really that healthy market is between that 5 and 7%. So our appreciation is still a little bit high,
Okay.
But that's taking all price points into consideration too.
Okay.
So if we want to talk about down payment, and really, again, one of the pain points for the buyers is having this down payment, how much they need. And I hope that most buyers at this point have been educated enough to know that they don't have to have 20% down for a primary, their home that they are going to live in purchase.
Correct.
And I know this is a rabbit hole that we want to be careful and maybe not to get totally down to, because there's going to be a part 3, 4, 5, and 6 if we do that.
I was just going to say, let's get them on the books now.
That's a bigger piece of it. But understand that as a home buyer, that is for your own personal property that you are going to live in, the homestead property.
Right.
They don't have to have 20% down.
No.
And they can have anywhere from 0% down
To 5% down. And, when Adam was on from WIDA, we brought back the fact that you don't have to be a first-time home buyer for that program. NeighborWorks, you don't have to be a first-time home buyer for those programs. And the other thing that I've been speaking a lot with and actually doing a lot, so not only speaking, I'm speaking to live clients, live consumers that are doing this, is they're selling their house, paying off all of their debt, because they just want and need a fresh start. And then maybe instead of thinking, well, if I sell my house and I got to put 20% down, no, you don't. So what we're doing is, because the rates are in the 6s, so they're a lot lower than where they were.
Right.
And they're doing a 5% down payment, paying off all their debt. And overall monthly, it's a better financial situation for them. They can start saving again. They don't have the the heavy weight of credit card debt or these higher interest rate debts on their hands, and they truly are getting that fresh start. So letting their equity work for them. So that's one for people who are homeowners now who think that if they buy, they have to put everything back into the next house they buy. They don't have to. And then two, the consumer who can absolutely afford a monthly payment, but doesn't have the 5 or 10% down that they think they need because their parents told them that private mortgage insurance is horrible and they should never pay for it, or X, Y, and Z. We're going to myth bust that with a future podcast here on private mortgage insurance, which then takes into that lower down payment.
Yes.
And I think what people are forgetting is if they put the lower down payment now and they get to that average of 9% appreciation in 4 or 5 years, that lower down payment is going to give them the wealth they're looking for the future. So getting in now with the down payment assistance program, some of them are even forgivable where you don't have to pay them back until you sell the house, or you don't have to pay them back at all. So the misnomer of having no money out of your pocket, and if you don't have money out of your pocket, you can't buy a home. That's simply not true.
Correct. So the more we can educate from a real estate perspective, from a lender perspective, the more our buyers are educated on what they need to come to the table with. I think we will see buyers not having to spend money on rent if they don't need to. But that then brings me to another pain point that buyers have is, what about the double move?
Yes.
The double move.
Great point.
Right. The double move becomes another pain point because they say, if we sell our house now, where are we going to go until we find another house?
Yep.
We want to put our house in the market now because, the market is quote unquote hot.
Yep.
And we will find our next house. We'll find it when we find it. But where do we go in the meantime? Where do we go for 30 days, 60 days, 6 months? What do we do? And this is where I would really suggest that if you're working with a real estate agent, lean into that real estate agent. Your realtor has more resources than you probably even realize from a short-term rental potential, or being able to draft an offer that allows either sellers who don't want to double move to stay there a little bit longer, or you potentially preoccupy. There's different ways to work around it. Now, again, if this is something that you're looking at doing, first off, talk to your real estate agent and talk to them about your options, but also talk to your lender, because there are rules that surround that buyer or that seller occupying that property post-ownership or pre-ownership.
60 days. I'll just clear that up for her right now. 60 days. You have to be in your house within 60 days. So that can help. And there are sellers who are looking to build, and maybe they can't move in right away, that they're willing to sell it back to you. Or like you said, the pre-occupancy. There's so much you can do there. And in a podcast, in a prior podcast, we've talked with a realtor, Amanda Furman, who has short-term rentals herself. So many realtors have investment properties that you might be able, or like you said, there are resources. They know other agents that have them that can help you out in that, where you're not going to be homeless or living out of a hotel. You can still be comfortable with your family. There are options there. And no, that doesn't mean you have to move into your in-laws' basement. You can if they allow it and you want to, but you don't have to.
I prided myself on never having moved back home after I graduated high school until we built our house. And then I had to move back home for 6 months. But the double move was worth it too.
Yes.
For me, it made sense financially to do it.
Yep.
There was it was a slight inconvenience. Yeah. But I think big picture, it was totally worth it. But again, lean into the real estate professionals. Let us help you. I have a number of rental properties, and we are more than willing to work with short-term tenants, because I understand how this works too. I understand the big picture of saying, I don't want to have to make a decision right away to find the house, but I know that I have the right buyer for my current home, and I want to be able to, or I want to give notice for my apartment now, and I want to have time to find something else.
Absolutely.
Short-term, it can really be the way to go.
It really can be. That you're so right there too, because I swear I'd never move home either. Right. And I moved home for 2 months while a condo that I was buying was being built. And when I left, I was living with my dad. And when I left, he looked at me, he goes, "No offense, you're never welcome back." And I looked at him, I said, no offense,
Yeah.
I love you, but I'm never coming back.
Right.
And we shook hands, and neither one of us have ever been back since. You get on your own and you're like, I don't want to go back
Absolutely.
home. So we feel that.
It is a humbling experience to have, to do that. Very thankful to have supportive parents who were like, our door is open.
He was supportive and let me back in, but man, I was like, I'm out. And he
But
was
did
like,
you move him? Did you move him with a toddler? Because I did.
No,
I moved him with a toddler.
I was solo,
right?
But it was still not. You
zero personal space.
Exactly.
Zero personal space. Yeah. But again, a means to an end, right?
Right.
And the other point of
solution.
a solution, and the other pain point to discuss that we discussed briefly in the last episode as well too, was buyers who currently own their homes who are in this, sweetheart of an interest rate.
Yep.
And they have zero idea how much equity they have in their house. And they are holding on to that 2.5%, 3%. And they have no idea that they're sitting on 50, 100, 150, 200,000 more or more equity because they refinanced in 2020.
Correct.
And there is this large chunk of homeowners that are sitting on those interest rates that are trying to figure out what they can do with what they have, and seeing these other homes go up and say, I never want to buy because I never want to lose my interest rate. Correct.
And that's a really great point. I do still talk to clients that are like, I'm never leaving this place. This place is going to be with me till the day I die because the rate's so low.
Right.
And more power to you.
Absolutely.
If you've got that and you can do that. But the larger spectrum of people are going to move up in house size, move down in house size, move because of, the unfortunate things of, they grow out of it. They're empty nesters, they're divorcing, they're, a loved one passes away and they don't need all the space, things like that. And then you have your people who are ready to move up because they need the space. And they're like, you know what? Having that low interest rate for a while was really great, but I know it was a one-off and I'm still going to buy even at 6% because I know that that's the real rate. I think that people are fixated on the fact that they still think that rates are like 10% and they are not.
Correct.
They never went up quite that high. But, people heard 8.5 after hearing 2.5 or 3 and thought the world was ending. And it may have slowed down a little bit, but the one thing that still happened was people bought homes.
They did.
They bought homes regardless. And it's just something that you have to plan around because the likelihood of those rates coming back are slim to none. And when they do, or if they did, not when they do, if they did,
right,
it's just going to drive the price point up more. And then people hated that too. So wouldn't you rather see the stability of, the mid to 5s to mid 6s between your 15 and 30-year rates, your adjustable rate mortgages, your fixed rate mortgages, and see the steady progression of appreciation versus the super highs and the super lows? I mean, it was almost like a bipolar market.
It was.
Everybody felt the wrath of that.
And what we created was an unsustainable market.
Correct.
And that was a true supply and demand.
Yes.
People wanting to take advantage of these low interest rates, get into the house they wanted to. But as you'll see as well too, is we don't have these super inflated prices either. So as interest rates climbed, it takes a little bit of time for the market to react to that. So market meaning the home prices. So interest rates initially go up. The home prices are still going out there as if the interest rates are, that sub 4, for example. And as they maintained that 5.5 to 7.5% interest rate, those housing prices really leveled out.
Yeah, they did.
And that's another piece that buyers, consumers need to understand is that we don't have these super inflated home prices anymore because sellers who have been educated by their real estate agents as well have been told, have been advised to make sure that they price according to the market,
right?
Not what they could have sold it for, not from that inflated price,
right?
But really making sure that's stabilized. And that stabilized market, this is I would say, a pretty safe market to purchase in now too, as these numbers stabilize within our MLS here. And when I'm speaking of MLSs, I'm referring to the Realtors Association Northeast Wisconsin, which, as I mentioned in our past episode as well, goes a little south of Fond du Lac and as far north as Pembine.
Yep.
But there's over 2,200 houses available, active.
There were only 1,400 last time.
Correct. There's over.
So that's quite a big jump.
Yes, there's over
Thank you for updating us
2,200.
on that number.
You're welcome. And that data is as of December 15th, 2024.
Okay.
So those numbers are obviously subject to change too.
Yeah.
But understanding that we have 800 more houses active with no offers on the market.
So I'm jumping in right now.
Yeah, absolutely.
I'm jumping in right now.
Take advantage, strike while the iron's hot. I think that most seasoned real estate agents will tell you that winter is a great time to buy. Every single time that I have moved, it's been in the winter.
Yes.
I have a little bit more time to breathe as a buyer. And I know that,
Right.
and I know that the person buying my house is very serious, that they don't feel like they have to make a snap judgment on a house either.
Correct.
And it's been, moving in the snow, you get over it. You're inconvenienced for a couple of days, but it was I would say it was a really good experience for me every time that I've moved.
And the weather is staying steady in Northeast Wisconsin. I mean, we don't have any crazy super low lows and freezing where it's gonna, affect anybody. But with, or I should say like with people moving.
Correct.
And actual like health things. But I will say the last 2 months prior going into 2025 were some of my busiest months and of 2024. And what I loved about it is because I'm seeing inspections. I'm seeing appraised values coming in at or above purchase price. I'm seeing contingencies on appraisals where the buyer has a little bit more. And for me, it's really important to protect that buyer too, because for them to come in the days a couple of years ago where they were paying $50,000 over with no inspection, no appraisal, no nothing, and then finding that they were handed somebody else's problem.
Right.
Because they were like, okay, I'm not going to tell you about that issue I had with the furnace or this or the roof or the leak and this kind of things, even though they're supposed to. We all know the reality of them supposing to and had, or maybe it was simply a pre-existing condition that the seller wasn't aware of that now came up.
Right.
I know that's happened to me before.
Yes.
With things far under the ground that the seller couldn't have ever known about.
Absolutely.
And it doesn't mean that they turned over their junk to me. It just means that things happen when you buy a house.
Right.
It's constantly moving. There's a lot of mechanicals, but being able to have an inspection for a peace of mind to either know what you're getting into or being able to negotiate it is huge and something that I feel like everybody deserves, but we walked away from for a while. So seeing them come back in is huge. And a stable market is going to offer those things.
Absolutely. The ability to negotiate. And I feel like there were a lot of consumers that didn't feel like they had the ability to negotiate with what they wanted. It was like, what's going to work for the seller? Let's make that happen.
Yep.
When you hire a buyer's agent in Wisconsin, knowing that their job is to work solely for you, not on behalf of the seller. The job is to work for you as the buyer.
Yeah.
And writing what is in your best interest and having the potential to have contingencies like a home inspection, like financing, like an appraisal, helping walk you through an appraisal gap, whatever. And again, have your real estate expert talk to you about what that looks like, what an appraisal gap is. Being able to have a home sale contingency. For a couple of years, that was almost a moot point with an offer to purchase, is that you weren't able to have a home sale contingency.
Oh gosh.
That a seller was not even going to entertain that.
Right.
And when we have more inventory on the market, it allows for more flexibility, and you as a buyer under buyer agency really feels like you have more control over the process.
As you should. And, I don't think sellers should give it away and I don't think buyers should give it away. I feel like a stable market is when sellers can choose a good offer that's right for them and a buyer can, like, going back to those negotiating days of a healthy market.
Correct.
And for those of you who can't see us on camera, everything she just said, I'm over here nodding slowly to every single thing, because I am taking the calls from clients now who said, I know I waived my inspection, but I got this big issue. Can I tap into my equity to fix it and things like that?
Right.
Knowing if they would have had an inspection, they either would have made a more informed decision buying the house, or they would have said, okay, we're not going to have the expenses to cover that later on. So we're going to have to look elsewhere. And those things are just super important.
Absolutely. So I think kind of to button up the conversation, really having the buyers know that while you have concerns out there as a potential home buyer or a home seller who then has to purchase a next home, this is where our value as real estate agents, real estate advisors.
Thank you. Yes, yes, and yes.
Like lean into that real estate professional that you know, like, and trust. Lean into them. Let them guide you through this process. It's a lot of moving pieces. I would say, like, the simple part is getting it on paper.
Right.
It's the piece from the time that it's accepted to the time that it closes. That's the most difficult part.
You're not lying.
A lot of moving pieces in there. And this is where your real estate agent shines. This is where their value is.
100%. Absolutely. And we've jokingly, but there is seriousness to it when we say, writing the offer is the easy part.
Yeah, absolutely.
Showing the house is the easy part. Not always, but it's getting it from accepted offer to closing table and making sure. I also can't stress enough, and maybe a shameless plug, but working with a lender who is going to communicate.
Absolutely.
The amount of deals that I've taken on in this last couple of months because the lender doesn't communicate is, or turned a client down when they should have never been turned down because they don't know their guidelines.
Exactly.
Is massive. So this is just kind of that, like I said, shameless plug where get the second opinion. If you're working with a realtor and it doesn't seem like a fit, that's not the same realtor as there is everywhere. Get a second opinion.
Yes.
Shop and make sure that you're working with a team and the team is built around you to make this the best experience you can, because it truly can be a great experience. I just had a closing last week where they went through every hurdle imaginable, but she was like, just kept herself in good spirits. She wanted the house bad enough. And she was like, tell me what to do. And at the end, we walked in and she was crying with gratitude because she was like, you are all angels. You guided me to what I needed to know to make a really difficult situation an experience that I enjoyed.
And that's what we're supposed to be doing. That's what we're supposed to be doing.
Exactly it. It's not where I threw my hands up and went, oh, this is the third thing we ran into. There were things that sometimes buyers aren't aware of that are going to happen. When it comes to an inspection, got through that. An appraisal, got through that. Okay. Oh, now we've got this. We got through that. They know about it, but making sure you had that solution so that when you told them maybe the thing that they didn't want to hear, they're like, okay, but there's a plan. We're good. And it keeps everybody going in the right side of things. Almost every for sale by owner I've ever worked with, they're fighting. They don't want to talk. One of them thinks that they, lack of a term, screwed each other, the other one over. And that all goes away when you have an agent who's working on your behalf, who's truly working on your behalf, and who works really well with other agents.
Yes. I think that's a good trifecta, is having a consumer who is willing to be guided.
Yep.
And a real estate agent who knows what they're doing and how to guide that consumer through, and a good lender. If you have all three of them, you're going to have a really good opportunity to get the house of your dreams with the down payment that you want, and feeling like that you're being held through the entire process.
Yep. Without feeling like you just gave the world away.
Exactly.
On a buyer side.
Right.
Awesome. No, this is so big. And I hope the buyers and the real estate agents who are listening take a lot of really good notes and decide 2025 is the year they're going to shine too. If you're a consumer and you're interested at all in real estate, now is the time to just sit down and at least learn the facts of what the market is doing. Don't listen to the hype on the media. So much of that is wrong right now. So much of it.
Please.
Go work with somebody in your local area who knows and trusts and understands what they're getting into and what you're getting into and buying, and setting you up to win. That setup to win is huge. And I can't say it enough. So Megan, thank you again for your...
Quite welcome. Thank you for having me again.
Yeah, you're welcome. Your expertise and giving it to us on a non-biased, just very generous information about what's truly going on out there.
Absolutely. Super happy to help.
Love it. Thank you so much. For those of you who are looking for more information or aren't sure where to start and are looking to maybe interview a few realtors, let me know. I have a plethora in all areas of Wisconsin and even nationally, if you're looking for a second home or anything like that, that would love to help you and make sure you're being taken care of and your best interest is, put first and foremost behind anyone else's. And for those of you who are listening in for the first time, we're so glad you're here. The only cost of entry is to like, subscribe, and even share this podcast with somebody who you think could really use it. We appreciate it, and we really look forward to bringing you a massive amount of information that will guide you through in all things mortgage through 2025. Megan Jacquet.
Thanks so much, Kristen.
Always a pleasure. Thank you.
Always. Thank you.
Have a great day.